What's going on, guys? It's Josh here with Buckeye Bowhunter, and today I'm going to do a little bit of a different video. This is going to be part 3 of my Intro to Turkey Hunting for Beginners series, and I'm going to kind of focus on e-scouting today and get into all the good stuff when it comes to scouting maps, using your computer, and figuring out where you want to start, where those turkeys might be. Save yourself a lot of walking and scouting in the field if you can kind of pinpoint a good area to focus on. And with that said, let's kind of get into it. So here we go. E-scouting, electronic scouting, virtual scouting, cyber scouting. It's got a bunch of different names, whatever you want to call it. It's just studying maps and looking at maps to kind of save yourself time and give yourself a starting location on where you think birds might be hanging out or spending their day, where you might want to hunt them. And with this part of the video, I'm going to kind of give you the tools and the things that I look for when e-scouting and what determines if I'm going to actually go check that spot out on foot or not. And with that said, let's get started here. So this is the first time I've done a video like this where I'm like recording my screen, so please bear with me if it's goofy. I hate the sound of my voice, so sorry about that. But why is e-scouting important? Let's start with that. So you could definitely be successful and go out in the woods and find birds without e-scouting. But e-scouting is really important to me because it saves me time. It's all about time management. You know, we all are busy. We all have full-time jobs and families and responsibilities at home that we have to pay attention to and make sure we're keeping up on. And e-scouting kind of allows me to shorten that learning curve of a property. If I have a certain property where I want to hunt, I can get on an e-scout, spend about 15-20 minutes, and kind of find the areas where I want to focus on, because I think maybe birds are going to be hanging out there, or they may be roosted there, instead of having to go there and walk that entire property. You know, where we're at in this specific example is Southern Ohio, and in Southern Ohio there are thousands upon thousands of public land acreage that you can run around and roam around and look for turkeys on. Unless you don't have a job or you got a ton of money, it's really hard to cover all of that on foot. That's where e-scouting comes in and is really important. So with that said, let's get into some of the stuff I look for. So turkeys actually kind of make it pretty easy on you as an e-scouter when you're trying to focus in on certain areas and put yourself in the best position possible. And that's because wild turkeys love diversity. Habitat diversity to me is the most important thing when it comes to finding birds and being in a good area. And what do I mean by habitat diversity? I mean all different kinds of habitat, from, you know, mature hardwoods to secondary growth, clear cuts, select cuts, river bottoms, ridge tops, open fields, crop fields. And the more diversity you can find in a specific area, usually the better that's going to be. And that's not only for wild turkeys, that's for pretty much all wildlife. Especially for deer hunting too, e-scouting can really help you locate areas where deer might be, because they are another species. They're an edge species. They like diversity. They like different habitat types. But when it comes to turkeys use all these different habitat types throughout the year, throughout the day. Depending on the time of the year, they use ones more than others. But I'm just going to kind of cruise around here and show you why I think this area is a pretty good area to start. And as you can see, just like with what you see in my screen, I see, you know, at least 3 or 4 different types of habitats here right off the bat. This one really stands out to me. This looks like a recent select cut. You can see probably when this photo was taken, it was right after the cut. There's not a lot of undergrowth here, but you know, by now, who knows how long ago this was taken. It could be super thick in here, which, you know, in the spring when those hens are nesting or they're brooding, they're looking for that real thick, high stem count, side cover kind of areas to hide their nests and keep their babies safe. Right here you see these bigger dark green blotches. This I would probably assume is kind of mature hardwoods. Turkeys definitely throughout the entire year are going to be using mature hardwoods, not only due to the mass producing trees, they produce a ton of food, acorns, all kinds of stuff for them to eat, but for roosting. Turkeys have to have big mature trees with horizontal branches to roost at night to stay safe, and they're going to have trouble roosting in little scraggly trees like this over here. This to me looks like kind of secondary growth or immature woods or trees. Could be really thick, definitely could be of interest to turkeys. You got a little open field right here, which is definitely a good thing. A lot of times big strutters in the spring will find these little hide holes like this to strut and show off their tail fans to the hens during breeding season. So that's a pretty cool little interesting spot, I would say. Another big thing that pops out to me are these big open areas right here. Now these to me look like they're probably clear cut at some point. They could be kind of open fields, but looking at these photos, they're probably really shrubby, thick, lots of bushes and shrubs, maybe goldenrod, grasses, that kind of stuff, which turkeys will definitely utilize. Here's another thing that's pretty interesting. These creek bottoms here, you can see there's a couple of them that run through. Turkeys definitely need water. Even if they're not drinking out of this creek, these creek bottoms definitely bring in all kinds of different, mass producing species of vegetation and trees, all kinds of bugs and frogs and stuff that turkeys will eat. So you're always going to want to kind of have an area where there is some kind of water source running through it, as the same for any type of animal you're hunting. And then another thing that really pops out to me that we haven't talked about yet is the topography in this area. The topography, the hills and the ridge systems in this area are super important, and that's what these lines are showing us. Now, if you've never tried to read a topo map, or maybe you know how to, probably better than me, but if you haven't, I'll kind of explain it really quickly. Each one of these lines is a certain elevation, and you can see right here this shows 900 feet of elevation. You could assume that this creek is probably the lower of the elevations. You can see right here this is 800, so between this 800 and this 900 foot elevation line, we have like 5 markers. So we could assume this is 20 feet of elevation between each one of these lines. Just in this short distance, we have almost 100 foot of elevation difference, which is pretty significant. And what that does for us is tell us, how the turkeys might be moving through the landscape. Not that they, use funnels and stuff like deer do, but, if birds are strutting in the spring and looking for hens, they're most likely not going to be strutting on these really steep hillsides. They're going to be up on these ridge tops, or maybe down in these bottoms, depending on how, thick they are. Another thing this elevation does for us is tell us where these birds might roost. So turkeys are lazy just like any other animal, and a lot of times when they roost, what you'll notice is they'll be roosting like kind of out at the tip of these ridges like this. And that's because they're able to stand up here on the hill on the top and fly straight out or almost fly down into their roost at night. And then those roosting locations, because they're up above all these big valleys, allows their gobbles in the morning when they're calling out to these hens to really travel really far and reach all these different ridge systems. Where if they were roosting down at a bottom like this, these hens might have a hard time hearing him. If there's a hen roosted over here and he's gobbling over here, she might not hear him across this big ridge top. So a lot of times, like I said, you'll see them roosted down here on these tips, which can definitely be pretty helpful if you're trying to kind of guess where birds might be roosting. So the other thing that topography helps you with is kind of helping you figure out how you're going to move through the landscape. So this shows you real quick that if you're parking here, say there's an access point right here and you want to hunt, this area over here for some reason, you're going to see this real quick and realize you got to walk up a couple really big hills and down a couple really big valleys to get over to here. So it can really help you figure out like what path you want to take and how you want to access certain properties, depending on your fitness level and how hard you really want to work and all that. So the last thing I kind of want to talk about when it comes to figuring out where I want to hunt is looking at access locations. And there's a few things that access locations can do for us. It can obviously give us places to park and access hunting land, but it can also tell you where other hunters and different hunting pressure might come from, or where other hunters might park and access those same chunks of property. So, you know, if I just follow down this road here, this National Devil Road or whatever it is, you know, I see one, maybe two different access points. That might be an access point right there. Come up here to the top. I don't see a lot of access points. I know though down here you can probably pull over on the side of the road anywhere that you can to access stuff. But a lot of times what I've seen down here is that most people are going to be parked in these access areas. And for an area this big and not seeing a lot of pull-offs like that, that's pretty encouraging. So let's kind of go with this. And I really like this up in here. So let's take this one for an example. So we found this access point down in here. And what that does for us, first off, what I'm seeing is that we're on the top of the hill. We're at the top of the ridge system right here. So I'm going to be able to park here in the morning when it's dark, and I'm already at a high point. And, you know, I'll talk about this in later videos, but that's really going to help you in the mornings when you're listening for these birds to gobble, is getting to a really high vantage point and being able to hear from really far away. If you are starting way down in here in this bottom, you know, say all your birds are roosted on this part of the property, you probably won't even hear them across all these hills. So by getting up high in the mornings and listening, you're going to have a lot better opportunities and a lot better chances to actually hear a bird gobble, because you're going to be able to hear from further out. So with that said, I'm looking at this area and I'm seeing a lot of different diversity. I'm seeing a lot of mature hardwoods here. I'm seeing some kind of secondary growth, like in these little drainage ways or these draws. The tip of this ridge looks like it might be kind of thick. I'm seeing a creek bottom down here. It looks like this might be kind of open grass. It might be like wetlandy. Could be a good area for birds to strut. If I zoom out again and come over here to the west, this is really interesting to me. This is a big bottomland, a big lowland. Looks like there's an old creek or an old oxbow, maybe a pond or something right here. And stuff like this can be really interesting to turkeys and kind of hold a lot of birds as well, just because you do have all this different diversity. You got these ridges right here with this big hardwoods. You know, birds could definitely roost in here. I won't say they won't, but you got a creek here. You got this big water body. You got this little, ridge top right here. There's a lot going on in this area that's got a lot going for it. And the thing that I like about it is our access, like I talked about earlier, is right here. So what I would do next, because I like this spot, I'm going to mark it on my map, and then I'm going to go out and I'm going to scout it, and say I find there is a lot of turkeys in here. I find some good sign. Maybe I get out there one morning and I hear a bird gobbling out at the end of this ridge top. That'll make it really easy for me to park here in the morning, walk out this ridge top, maybe get 3/4 of the way out or half of the way out and listen. And if that bird starts gobbling, then I can make a move. They won't always roost in the same trees. Maybe the next day he's roosted over on this ridge top. Even if I'm out here, I'll still have an opportunity to work my way back out, come around and work out this ridge to try and get a crack at him. So that's one little location. I really liked it just because of all the different diversity in here. And even, down to the south, we had all these different habitat types as well, which was pretty interesting. So with that said, let's look at another location. And this is one up here in northern Ohio. If you hunt the area, you might recognize this area. But this, I want to kind of use as an example of something that I would kind of stay away from, and you'll find out why here in a minute. But just looking at this, if I had never been here before, which I have hunted this before, This looks fantastic. We have, you know, just in my screen, 6 or 7 different habitat types easy. I would definitely assume that there are turkeys here, and I'm sure there are. But you can see if I zoom in here, we got all these big open fields. They look like crop fields with different rotations. We got some secondary growth here, some secondary growth here. Here's a big creek bottom, which is, you know, obviously good. Turkeys want water. This kind of looks like wetlands, which can definitely be an attractant to birds. Over in here, looks like we got some mature hardwoods, which we obviously talked about is important for turkeys roosting. We got a lot more mature hardwoods over here. This looks like a pond or a lake, kind of a mowed dam, it looks like. Oh, what really looks good to me is just how kind of dispersed and diverse it is. There's not any really big track of anything. It's all kind of really spread out and really nice. Pretty big chunk of mature hardwoods that kind of butts up to these fields. Looks really nice. You got a creek that kind of runs through here. A lot of lower secondary growth over in here. This is all really, really good looking. Not a lot of topography. Northern Ohio is pretty flat. That might make it a little hard to kind of pinpoint where birds might be roosted or where they might be moving, but that's not what would keep me out of here. The next thing I'm going to look at in this spot is access, how would I access this property? So as you can see here, if I zoom in, this is all public land, by the way. I'm just going to go around this block, around these roads. You can see there's one access point here. This looks like an access point, and all these, you know, dotted lines look like access paths. Here's an access point, parking lot. Here's another one. So what are we up to? 4. We'll keep going down the road. We'll go up this road. Here's another one. This is 5. Coming up behind that lake. This looks like a pull off here, maybe. We'll call that 6. We'll go around this corner. Here's an access point here. It's hard to tell, but I know this is a pull off. That's an access point as well. So we're at like 7 or 8. Here's another parking lot. That's 9. Here's another one. That's 10. Here's one that's 11. Here's one that's 12. Here's another one, 13. There's a pull off right here, 14. Another pull off, 15. And 16. There's another one, 17. There's another one, 18. And then I know there's no access roads over there, or access areas over there. So just in this block alone, where we're looking, there are 18 different parking areas or pull-off areas for hunter access. Not to mention the very limited topography, which makes this very easy walking, and the obvious trails. The Buckeye trail here actually cuts this whole chunk in half as well. So hunter access is pretty unlimited, and it looks like you could probably get to every square inch of this property pretty easily. I know this is a mile by like a mile and a half chunk, but you know, even if there were 3 or 4 guys in here, it'd be pretty easy to bump into them, and I'm sure this gets hunted very hard. So just the fact alone that there's that many access points in this chunk really deters me from hunting there. And I know just from experience, because I have hunted this before, like I said, but there is a ton of hunting pressure. And opening day of turkey season, almost every one of these parking lots will have a truck in it, which makes it pretty hard to be successful. Not that you can't be successful, but if I had a choice, I would not hunt this property. Now, I know there are turkeys here, and I know you can be successful, but that's why e-scouting to me is so important, because I can look at these areas that may look good and see all these parking areas and realize, like, I bet you there's a bunch of people in there. maybe I look at this and then I decide I'm going to take a drive, you know, one morning the first week and see how many people really are in there. And maybe it's not being hunted as hard as I thought, and then I give it a try. You can find all these things out just by e-scouting. So with that said, let's check out one more area that looks really good to me, and I actually may give it a try this year, and that is what we're looking at right here. You can see there's a ton of diversity in this area. This all looks really good to me. As you can see, we got a bunch of ponds in here, maybe some mowed areas, a big creek bottom that kind of runs across the whole property. There are some access paths, as you can see, that kind of run through here. We got some swamp in here. All this low-lying, brushy, thick stuff kind of intermingled with this hardwoods and mixed in with the topography looks really good to me. It also looks like it's not the easiest walking, even though you can tell there are some kind of access paths that run through here. To me, this looks like some kind of old strip mined sort of area or something like that. Let's go ahead and talk about what I see here and what kind of interests me. Right off the bat, for nesting hens, all of this stuff looks phenomenal. There's nothing here that really kind of tells me, oh, the turkeys are in this location, but in this big general area, you know, between this nesting and brooding habitat and these creek bottoms here, there's going to be enough habitat and thick cover in there for those birds to nest and do their thing. The other thing that I noticed is across this creek bottom, we have a lot of topography, big ridge tops. This stuff kind of looks like, you know, more mature hardwoods to me, which, as we discussed, is very important for turkeys. And this looked really interesting to me as well. This must be, you know, a bunch of beaver dams or something running down this big creek bottom. But, you know, I'm not sure what this exactly looks like on the ground, but this could definitely be interesting for, you know, toms strutting and looking for hens or bugs and frogs and stuff like that. Could definitely be a draw for them. And also on these ridge tops, you know, like we talked about in southern Ohio, a lot of times what you'll see are these birds roosted out at the tips of these ridges. You can see with our topography here at the base of this hill, or almost to the base of this hill, we're kind of at that 1,000-foot mark. We're up here, we're at 1,200 feet, so we're almost moving, you know, from the bottom of this hill to the top. It's almost a 200-foot change in elevation, if not more actually, because the tippy top's actually right here. So you could definitely get some interesting, you know, roosting patterns and stuff all around these ridge systems, which I do like. The last thing I'm going to look at is access, is parking areas. And Onyx Maps really helps you out, and it puts these public parking area icons in the areas that you can park. That this particular piece of public is a lot different than down like in the Wayne National Forest, where you can kind of just pull over on the side of all those roads down there. Here you're kind of restricted to these parking areas. So just kind of doing a quick look, I got 2 parking areas down here at the very south end of this chunk. I got another parking area right here, which, you know, that kind of changes things for me a little bit. I didn't realize that this was actually a road, which I don't think it is. That can't be a road. But this may be a county road that comes in and dead ends right here. That's what that is. So there is another parking area right here. But there is no road here, which does kind of save it for me. And then if I go further up to the north to the next road, there's another parking area here. And I swear there was another one in here somewhere. Yes, right here. So for an area this large, and only having like 5 or so public access spots, that's pretty good. This is a giant chunk of land. And with all the diversity from the ponds, ridge tops, mature woods, secondary growth, all this really thick low-lying brush in here intermixed with, you know, small chunks of hardwoods, ponds, big river bottom, this is definitely something I want to check out. Now, as we talked about earlier, these birds are probably going to be roosting somewhere along this line right here, I would assume. Maybe at the tops of these big draws like this. But if I were to come in here for a morning hunt, never having been here before, I would probably stay away from these access areas because, first off, I'm not sure what this walk would look like coming up through here. If you don't have an access path cutting through this stuff, it could be pretty gnarly walk in the dark. Second off, you're going to be coming up lower than these birds, and if you're trying to make a move on these birds in gray light, the last thing you want to do is be trying to walk up one of these ridges while they're roosted on it. So I would probably lean towards coming in from the north here. This is looking like the access point that I would probably use. What I might do is pick like a central location in this whole area, or maybe the highest point. Like this looks like it might be the highest point I'm looking at. I see 1200 and this keeps going up, so this might be pretty high up, but it's also pretty far to the east, and you may have trouble hearing any birds if they're gobbling over here. So this spot might be the one that I want to kind of hang out in, or at least maybe right here before I get to the very end, so I'm not committing completely to that. If I get way out here and then I hear a bird gobbling over here, it might be a pretty long walk to get out and figure out a way to get around and come in and get on him before he flies down in the morning or before he stops gobbling. So I think somewhere in this area, if I could stop and listen, that would give me a pretty good starting point, pretty good location to make a move if I need to. I could jump around here and work my way out this way if I hear birds over here, and vice versa. I might have some trouble crossing this creek, but as you can see, I kind of figure out, I got a plan in my head on what I think I would want to do, and the next step would be to actually get out in the field, put boots on the ground, and see what it really is like. And a lot of times I've gotten out there and it looks nothing like I expected it to. I wouldn't say a lot of times, but sometimes you'll get out there and it looks nothing like you expect it to. And, you know, there may still be turkeys there. It may still be a good area to hunt, but like I said, this creek may be impossible to cross. And if I find turkey sign over here, I know I'm probably going to want to walk down the road or something and pop in on this ridge top and come down in if I'm allowed to. I don't have the property lines up right now, but you can see how actually putting boots on the ground would be super beneficial, but e-scouting definitely gives you a great starting point. So with that said, I will say if you are interested in getting into turkey hunting this year, the first thing I would do is pull up your computer, pull up your phone. You don't have to use Onyx Maps. You could use Google Maps. You can use anything you want and just start looking at areas. Look for diversity of habitat, how turkeys might use that habitat. Look for hunter access, give you indications on how much pressure there might be in the area and how you might access that property as well. And give yourself a good starting point for when you actually do get out there into the field and start scouting for these turkeys. So hopefully that helps you guys get started. With that said, the next part of this video is I'm going to be actually out in the field and kind of boots on the ground showing you guys what I'm actually looking for, what the actual turkey sign looks like, and how I use that to formulate a plan for the turkey hunting season. So thank you guys for listening to me. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Like I said, this is the first time I've done a video like this, so if you like this, please hit me up in the comments. If there's anything I missed, all you expert advanced turkey hunters, please put that down in the comments as well. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to ask. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit that notification bell if you want to be notified every time I upload a new video. And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one.